The cameras were rolling. The audience was silent. And then, for the first time in over 20 years of facing humanity's darkest moments on television, Dr. Phil McGraw did something no one expected. His voice cracked. His hands trembled. And tears he had held back through thousands of episodes finally broke free. It wasn't a celebrity confession. It wasn't a scandal or a shocking revelation. It was something far more powerful. It was a 10-year-old boy holding a crumpled piece of paper, speaking words that would shatter every defense mechanism the seasoned psychologist had ever built. This is the story of the day Hope walked onto that stage in the smallest, most unexpected form and reminded everyone watching what it truly means to be human. The taping of that Thursday afternoon episode had started like any other. Studio lights at full intensity. Audience members settling into their seats. Production assistants checking microphones. Dr. Phil reviewing notes backstage, mentally preparing for what the show's producers had described as a challenging family intervention case. The guest list seemed straightforward: the Patterson family. Mother, father, and their 10-year-old son, Michael. The case file read like so many others. Financial devastation. Medical crisis. A child battling a rare autoimmune disease. Parents drowning in debt, working 3 jobs between them, watching their son's childhood disappear into hospital rooms and treatment schedules. Dr. Phil had handled cases like this before. He knew the script. Assess the situation. Provide resources. Connect them with medical experts. Offer financial counseling. Send them to treatment facilities if needed. Keep it moving. Stay professional. Don't let it get too deep. But something about this case felt different from the moment he read the file. There was a note attached from one of his producers. "Dr. Phil, you need to see this one yourself. The boy asked to bring something. We don't know what it is. He won't tell anyone. He says it's only for you." When the Patterson family walked onto that stage, the audience saw what America would soon see. A mother whose eyes had forgotten how to smile. A father whose shoulders carried the weight of every bill collector's call. And a small boy with a backpack that seemed too heavy for his fragile frame. Michael Patterson was small for his age. The treatments had taken their toll. His skin was pale, his movements careful, as if his body was made of glass. But his eyes held something the medical reports couldn't quantify. A light that shouldn't have survived what he'd been through. The studio went completely silent as Michael clutched that backpack like it held the secrets of the universe. Dr. Phil began the way he always did. Calm. Direct. Establishing the facts. "Mr. and Mrs. Patterson, help me understand where you are right now." The father spoke first, his voice hollow. "We're drowning, Dr. Phil. We've lost our house. We're living in my sister's basement. I work 2 jobs. My wife works nights. We barely see Michael. And every day we watch him fight this disease knowing we can't afford the treatment that might actually save him." The mother couldn't speak. She just shook her head, tears streaming down her face. Dr. Phil turned to the boy. "Michael, how are you doing with all this?" The boy looked up at him with those impossibly old eyes. "I'm okay, Dr. Phil. I know Mom and Dad are trying really hard. Do you understand what's happening? Do you know why you're sick?" "Yes, sir. The doctors explained it. My body is confused. It's attacking itself instead of the bad stuff." Dr. Phil nodded slowly. This was the part where he usually transitioned into solutions. Resource coordination. Treatment options. But something stopped him. An instinct honed over decades of reading people told him to wait. To listen. To let this boy speak. "Michael, I understand you brought something with you today. Something you wanted to share." The boy nodded, his small hands moving to unzip the backpack. The audience leaned forward. The cameras zoomed in. Even the production crew, usually focused on technical details, found themselves holding their breath. What Michael pulled out wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a shocking document or a piece of evidence. It was a composition notebook. The kind elementary school kids use for writing assignments. The cover was decorated with crayon drawings. Stars. Hearts. Stick figures holding hands. "I've been writing things," Michael said quietly. "Things I want people to know. Things I've learned." Subscribe and leave a comment because the most powerful part of this story is still ahead. Dr. Phil's professional mask was still in place, but anyone who knew him well could see the subtle shift. The way he leaned forward. The way his hand moved unconsciously to his chest. "What kind of things, Michael?" "Things about being sick. And being scared. And about Mom and Dad." The boy opened the notebook carefully, as if it might break. "But mostly about something else." "What's that?" Michael looked up at him with a clarity that seemed impossible for a 10-year-old. "About how being happy isn't about not being sick. It's about choosing to see the good stuff even when everything's hard." The audience was motionless. Not a cough. Not a whisper. Just the hum of the cameras and the boy's small voice filling a space designed for conflict and revelation. "Can I read you something, Dr. Phil?" For the first time in the taping, Dr. Phil's voice was soft. Almost uncertain. "Of course you can." Off camera, Dr. Phil made a choice no producer expected. He stood up from his chair and moved to sit on the edge of the stage, directly in front of Michael, removing every physical barrier between them. The boy turned pages filled with crayon drawings and careful handwriting. He found what he was looking for and began to read. "Dear Dr. Phil. My name is Michael and I am 10 years old. I have been sick for 3 years. Some days I can't get out of bed. Some days I throw up all my food. Some days I cry because the medicine makes me feel worse than the sickness." The mother covered her mouth, tears now flowing freely. The father stared at his son as if seeing him for the first time. Michael continued, his voice steady despite the trembling of his small hands. "But I wrote this letter because I want to tell you something important. Something I figured out." Dr. Phil's jaw was tight. His hands clasped together. Anyone who had watched his show for years could see it. The walls were cracking. "Every morning, I wake up and I'm still alive. And that means I get another day. Another day to see my mom smile when I tell her a joke. Another day to play video games with my dad even though his hands are tired from work. Another day to draw pictures. Another day to pet my dog. Another day to be here." The production booth had gone quiet. Cameras kept rolling, but every operator's eyes were glistening. "The doctors say I might not get better. They say the treatment might not work. And I know Mom and Dad are scared because I hear them crying at night when they think I'm asleep." Mrs. Patterson let out a sound somewhere between a sob and a gasp. "But here's what I know, Dr. Phil. Here's what I really, really know." Michael looked up from his notebook, making eye contact with the man who had counseled presidents and confronted criminals, who had stared down addiction and abuse without flinching. Being alive is the miracle. Not being healthy. Not being rich. Not having a big house. Just being alive and getting to love people and having people love you back. That's the whole thing. That's everything. But what happened next is something no one in the room or watching at home saw coming. Dr. Phil's hand moved to his face. His fingers pressed against his eyes. His shoulders, always so square and confident, began to shake. And then, in front of 300 audience members, a television crew, and eventually millions of viewers, Dr. Phil McGraw broke down. Not a polite tear. Not a dignified moment of emotion. But a real, raw, human collapse of every professional wall he had built over 2 decades of maintaining composure through humanity's worst moments. He tried to speak. His mouth opened. No words came out. He shook his head, overwhelmed by something he hadn't felt in years. The pure, unfiltered truth of a child who had every reason to be bitter, angry, and broken but had instead found something that most healthy, wealthy, comfortable adults spend their entire lives searching for. Michael, seeing Dr. Phil's reaction, did something that would later be called one of the most powerful moments in television history. He closed his notebook carefully, climbed down from his chair, and walked over to where Dr. Phil sat on the edge of the stage. The boy was so small. Dr. Phil's so large. But in that moment, it was Michael who seemed to tower over everyone in that room. He held out his notebook. "This is for you, Dr. Phil. Because I know you help people every day. And sometimes people who help people forget that they need help too. This is to remind you why you do what you do." Dr. Phil took the notebook with trembling hands. The camera caught the moment his fingers closed around it, the slight weight of it in his palm. A child's handwriting. Crayon drawings. The distilled wisdom of someone who had looked death in the face and chosen hope anyway. "Michael!" Dr. Phil's voice was broken. Raw. Real. How did you find this? How did you learn this?" The boy smiled. Not the smile of someone trying to be brave, but the smile of someone who genuinely meant it. "I didn't find it, Dr. Phil. It found me. When everything got taken away, all that was left was what actually mattered. And once you see it, you can't unsee it." The audience was crying. Not quiet tears. Full, heaving sobs. People holding each other. Strangers gripping each other's hands. The cameras captured it all. The collective breaking and rebuilding happening in real time. Dr. Phil stood up slowly. He looked at Michael's parents. "Do you understand what you have here? Do you see what this boy is teaching not just you, but everyone watching?" Mr. Patterson nodded, unable to speak. Mrs. Patterson was openly weeping, her hands reaching for her son. Dr. Phil turned to the camera. To the millions who would eventually watch this. His face was still wet with tears. His voice was thick with emotion. "I have sat in this chair for 20 years. I have heard confessions of the worst things human beings can do to each other. I have confronted abusers, liars, addicts, criminals. I have never, not once, been unable to maintain my professional composure." He held up Michael's notebook. "This child, who has every reason to be angry at the world, at God, at the unfairness of what he's facing, has just taught me something I thought I knew but had forgotten. That hope isn't about circumstances. Hope isn't about having good news or easy answers. Hope is a choice. A daily, hourly, minute-by-minute choice to see the miracle of being alive even when everything hurts." Dr. Phil walked over to Michael and knelt down to his level. "You've given me a gift today, son. A gift I didn't know I needed. And I'm going to do something I don't usually do." He looked directly into the camera again. "Stop the tape." The production booth erupted in confusion. In 20 years, Dr. Phil had never stopped a taping like this. Never broken the fourth wall so completely. "I need everyone in this studio to understand something. This isn't content. This isn't a show. This is a moment that every single person here needs to carry with them. Because if this boy, facing what he's facing, can choose hope, what excuse do any of us have?" He turned back to Michael. "I want to make you a promise. Right here. Right now. Your family's medical bills are covered. Your treatment, whatever it costs, handled. But more than that, I'm going to make sure your words reach every person who needs to hear them." The boy's eyes widened. Mrs. Patterson collapsed into her husband's arms. Mr. Patterson mouthed, "Thank you," over and over, unable to form actual words. But Dr. Phil wasn't finished. He stood up, still holding that notebook like it was made of gold. He walked to the center of the stage and addressed the audience directly. "I need you all to understand something. In this business, we deal with crisis every single day. We see the worst of humanity. The lies. The betrayals. The destruction people cause to themselves and others. And somewhere along the way, you build walls. You have to. Otherwise you couldn't do this job." His voice cracked again. "But every once in a while, someone comes along and reminds you why those walls are dangerous. Because they keep out the pain, yes, but they also keep out moments like this. Moments of pure, unfiltered truth." He looked back at Michael. This boy doesn't have the luxury of walls. He faces his reality every single morning. And instead of letting it destroy him, he's letting it teach him. He's turning his suffering into wisdom. His pain into purpose. Dr. Phil turned to the parents. You think you're failing him because you can't afford everything. But you've given him something money can't buy. You've raised a child who understands what matters. Who can look at the worst hand life can deal and still find reasons to smile. Michael smiled and walked over to Dr. Phil, wrapping his small arms around him. The studio erupted in applause. Not the polite kind. The kind that shakes the room. The kind that comes from 300 people simultaneously remembering what it means to be human. Share and subscribe. Make sure this story is never forgotten. 3 months later, Michael's notebook was published. The proceeds went to families facing similar battles. Dr. Phil kept the original on his desk. A reminder that sometimes the teacher becomes the student. And on days when the weight of the world felt too heavy, he would open it and read those words again. Being alive is the miracle. Because a 10-year-old boy had looked into the face of suffering and found something most people spend their whole lives searching for. And in doing so, he had reminded everyone watching what it truly means to hope.